They said it would be simple, they said it would be harmless, a dance, a night out, a test to see if she would stay loyal to the man, who swore she was everything to him. But as the lights dimmed and the cameras rolled, there was already something in her eyes that made the crew exchange glances. Something playful, something dangerous, and maybe something too real for the screen to catch fully. That plan was for her to meet up with a supposed stranger, someone planted by the UDY team, someone trained to flirt without crossing the lines, someone meant to dance with her, see how far she'd go. While her boyfriend watched from the van outside with a microphone in his hand and a storm in his chest, he paced in that van, sweating with every glance at the monitor, chewing the side of his thumb as if pain would keep him sane. And all the while, the crew around him remained focused on the feed, waiting for the moment she would prove or destroy the bond they both claimed was unbreakable. The music started slow, at first pulsing through the club air like a heartbeat. Then faster as she laughed at the decoy's first approach, then even faster when she accepted his hand and moved toward the dance floor with the kind of confidence that once had belonged only to him. He leaned forward, eyes wide, as he whispered that he trusted her, that she would never do anything to make him feel small, that this was just to prove what he already knew. And yet his voice betrayed him, because deep down, he feared the test wasn't needed at all. He feared she had already started slipping away. And then it began, her body moving with rhythm and heat and light, her hands not resisting the ones offered to her, her smile not fading but growing more alive than he'd seen in weeks. And the way she leaned, in the way she whispered back, the way her fingers brushed the stranger's neck, told a story louder than the music. Crew looked at each other, then at him, and he froze, mouth open, eyes locked on the woman he thought he'd marry, as she danced like no one was watching. Except they all weren't. One spoke for what felt like minutes, maybe more, maybe hours, as her movements grew bolder, as her back arched in time with the beat, and as the stranger's hands lingered too long in places that made his fists curl and his breath stutter. The camera zoomed, and he saw it all, every tilt of her head, every smile that used to be his, every sway that made her seem like she'd forgotten what was real and what was being tested. One of the crew asked if he wanted to cut it now, end the scene before it got worse, but he shook his head, because he had to know. He had to see if she'd remember him in that moment, if she'd pull away, or if she would let the fantasy swallow her whole. She didn't stop. Instead, she closed her eyes and let the music lead her somewhere he couldn't follow. And the man she danced with leaned closer, said something in her ear that made her laugh, made her lean back and look at him like he was the only one in the room. The boyfriend pressed his lips together and whispered that maybe this was just her having fun, maybe this was how she danced with friends, maybe this wasn't betrayal, maybe this wasn't the end of everything. But the crew didn't say anything, and silence filled the van, like a warning, like a countdown ticking toward something none of them were ready for. And then she turned around, pressed herself against the decoy's chest, and smiled in a way that broke the last hope he had. He stood up, knocking over his chair, the feed still running behind him, the screen frozen on her face, lit up with freedom or desire or something he no longer understood. And he walked out of the van into the night air like it could fix what had already fallen apart inside the club. She kept dancing, unaware that the test had already ended, unaware that loyalty, once questioned, never truly recovers, unaware that the man she thought was watching would no longer be waiting. Cameras were packed, the lights shut off, the crew left behind whispers and glances and quiet apologies that didn't mean anything, because the damage had already written itself across every second of the footage. She finally stepped outside, smiling, hair, wild cheeks flushed, and eyes searching the street for him, for the man who asked her to prove herself to a lens instead of to his heart. But he was gone, and the only ones left were the team, who avoided her gaze and said nothing as she asked where he was, as she looked confused, then worried, then scared. They told her he left, that he didn't say a word, just walked into the night without turning back. And she stood there, the echo of the music still ringing in her head as her heartbeat grew louder and her breath shorter. She called his name, but there was no answer, only silence and regret and the slow creeping weight of what her actions had meant. not in the moment. But in the truth that followed, she tried to explain, she tried to laugh it off, said it was all fun, said it didn't mean anything. But the footage said otherwise. The way she moved, the way she smiled, the way she let someone else in, said everything she didn't want to admit. He watched the video later alone in the dark, pausing every few seconds as if searching for the moment. She remembered him for the second she hesitated, but there wasn't one. And maybe she wasn't cheating, maybe it was just dancing, maybe it was the pressure or the test or the thrill of it all. But loyalty isn't measured by what you don't do. It's measured by what you choose not to do even when no one's watching. He deleted the footage that night, but the images stayed burned behind his eyes. It's the kind you can't rewind or erase, and she never danced like that again, not for anyone. Not even herself, because the test was never about the dance, it was about the distance that had already grown between them, a gap too wide for music or love or apologies to close. And once trust is gone, once the rhythm breaks, there is no song left. To save what's already lost,